Hi everybody, my name is Emma, this is Emma Rose in Books. Today I wanted to film for you a comparison between publishing your book through Ingram Spark and publishing it through KDP. I think there's lots of videos out there comparing Ingram Spark with CreateSpace, but since CreateSpace merged with KDP, I think in September, you know, there's going to be less stuff out there. So I thought it would be really useful to share my experience of publishing through both of them. First of all, I would like to explain how it came about that I published with both of them. So my book is called Milk. It's a story about my experience breastfeeding my children, and then with lots of factual information about the science and politics and etc about breastfeeding. The links are below if you're interested. And initially I planned to use Ingram Spark and CreateSpace. So once all my files were finalised, my book was designed by the team at 8 Little Pages, who were amazing, and they did all my interior formatting as well. When the files were formatted, I went to Ingram first. It was just chance that that's the way it went. And it took me a little while fiddling around with getting everything set up. And literally just as I was finishing it off, CreateSpace announced that they were merging to KDP and that they weren't accepting anybody's books. So obviously I still could have carried on with KDP, but I decided at the time, you know what, I don't want to go with this brand new, I mean it's not a brand new company, but while things were still in flux, I didn't want to deal with it. There were changes in the artwork, so my designers would have had to sort all that out, and they were still learning about it and everything. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it through Ingram. Then when my book came out, it was published on the 22nd of October, Amazon.co.uk was listing a 1 to 3 month delivery time. Now, I don't know about you, but if I tried to buy a book and it said a 1 to 3 month delivery time, I wouldn't buy the book, or I would buy it some other way, but I actually probably just wouldn't buy it. And I just felt that I was damaging sales by my book seeming like it wasn't available. What I will add though is that the issues were only through .co.uk. It worked perfectly with Amazon.com. But since my primary market being that I'm a British writer and I'm largely talking about Britain in my book, I need to be able to sell in this country. So it may be that if you're in the US, it won't be such a big deal to you. The UK market might not be as important to you, and the .com seemed to work. You know, it's one of those things, see how you go. But for me, I just, how can you have those kind of delivery times? A week maybe, months, nah. And when I spoke to Ingram, they said, well no, it won't take that long, and it seemed to be a problem with the metadata, and they were saying just leave it, it will clear itself up. But then I was looking at other people's books that were published through Ingram, and a lot of them either had long delivery times or said they were out of stock, and I just thought, you know, I can't take this risk. I need to have my book looking available and all of that. So I decided to suddenly publish through KDP, which you can do. You can put a book through KDP that's already out. And I'm glad I did. I think it was the right move. My book now shows as next day delivery, so I've not got that issue of it seeming prohibitive. So I had the experience of publishing through both of them, but it was just a little bit complicated. Anyway, let's go through what I found from using both of the services. So the first thing is looking at the copies. So this is the Ingram Spark version. They don't really offer a proof copy. What you would have to do is either have your artwork saying proof or something, and then pay to have your artwork updated. Yeah, that's the only way you'd be able to do it. Otherwise, put stickers on. So yeah, that's the Ingram Spark version. With KDP, you can order a proof copy, which comes with this grey band on it that says not for resale, which is really cool if you want to send ARCs out, that you can order that version if you want to. There are differences between the print of the two of them. The Ingram Spark version, it's probably not going to show up especially well. Oh, well, maybe, is a slightly darker colour. I prefer the colouring on the Ingram version. I think that the cover looks nicer, but there's not an awful lot in it. The cream paper is different. Again, I'm not sure how well it's going to show up. The Ingram one is this one, and this is KDP, and the Ingram one is slightly yellower. The KDP version is thicker by a millimetre, maybe, but it is a slightly thicker book, and it has a bit of a crease on the front. I don't know how well it's going to show up, whereas the Ingram one doesn't. But they're all minor differences other than that. Oh, the other thing is that with the Ingram version I could design my own barcode, and it's got a very pretty barcode on it. I didn't design it, take that back, 8 Little Pages designed it, but it's very nice. Whereas with KDP, it's more difficult to send your own barcode. I know that on the proof copies, the barcode is a different barcode for proofs. So this isn't necessarily the one that you would get, but still, it's plain. It's not as pretty a barcode. I don't know what it would look like on the one that customers would order. I'm not going to buy a book and be like, oh, the barcode isn't beautiful, but yeah, those are the differences. I prefer the print on the Ingram Spark version, but there isn't an awful lot between them. Of course, another thing to mention is that with Ingram you do have the option of producing hardbacks, which you can't do through KDP. I didn't do it, but if you do want to do it, that's another benefit. The next thing I want to talk about is using the websites. So uploading all of your files and everything onto the Ingram Spark website. There's a lot more to fill in, there's a lot more details you have to put in. Sometimes the wording isn't all that clear of what they want. However, they have guides on how to use it, and because lots of people have used Ingram Spark, there's loads of information out there, so if you're not clear on something you can look up, or what am I supposed to put in here. I didn't think it was difficult, I thought it was just more detailed, but I know that people say that the Ingram Spark version isn't as user-friendly. On the other hand, the KDP website was very clear, I think. You know, they were both fine in that respect. So related to that then is the customer service. Now, the customer service through Ingram Spark was really good. They have web chat, so if I had a question about something, I could reach somebody instantly, and that was brilliant, and they were really helpful. There was only one occasion, which I'll talk about in a moment, when they weren't helpful, but every other time, everything I asked, they knew their stuff, they were really great, and it was just fantastic. If you had a question, you could just ask it and you instantly had the answers. With Amazon, there is no web chat, there is no phone number. They are an ethereal company. I don't know why you can't contact them, but you can't. The only way to contact them is to go onto the help pages, whittle it down to the point of, you know, I have not found the answer in this, and then there's a contact form that you fill in and it takes 24 hours to get an answer. If you've got an urgent question, so you're trying to get something done because it's critical in the timeline, or you've made a stupid mistake that needs to be fixed, you've got to wait. And so that's very frustrating. I appreciate that for a big company, having people available to help you at any time is a big thing, and I know that probably if you're dealing with new indie authors who are learning, that you probably get asked questions that have really obvious answers, but I just think good customer service and being available for customer service is really important. That said, Amazon's help were brilliant. Once I managed to get hold of them, they were really helpful, but just actually getting hold of them I found very frustrating, that I'd have to wait, and then if I wanted to ask them further questions then I had to wait again. So yeah, the customer service was a lot better with Ingram Spark. So the next thing to talk about is the ebook. I wanted to publish my ebook through Ingram, and I couldn't. I could not get the files through no matter what I did. We tried, couldn't do it. It seems that the fonts used in my book, as well as my book is referenced, and so the little superscript references, those things combined made it very hard for it to get through Ingram Spark's web checker thingy. And even they have like a web checker that you can use to see before you upload it to their website to check your files, and that would say that the files were fine, and then I'd put them through Ingram and they weren't fine, and all the error messages, I had no idea what they meant. That was the only time when I came up against a wall with Ingram, was because I asked them for help and they said that they can't help with file errors on ebooks, which I found frustrating because, you know, I needed to know what the file errors meant, what I needed to do. I am not any kind of expert in computer language, and when you get all that kind of stuff, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't, you know, So that was frustrating. So I ended up only publishing my ebook through KDP, and that ultimately ended up with me publishing through Kindle only, actually. At some point I may end up, in order to use a wide distribution, which is why I wanted to use Ingram, is publish my book through Draft to Digital. But at the moment my book is Kindle only, because it's on Kindle Unlimited. So there was that. I found the ebook thing, I couldn't use it. As simple as that. I just could not. And that delay is why I ended up not being able to use CreateSpace. So there we are. The next thing to talk about is author copies. So as I've already said, I think it's really good that you can get proof copies with the grey band already on, and that come with a different ISBN, because that's all really good for your resale and all of that, to make sure that these copies aren't sold as proper copies if you're giving someone a free one. That is really good, and I would have really liked that service before my book came out. But author copies, now this was actually a big reason for why I went through Ingram in the first place, is because when it was CreateSpace, you could only order up to 5 author copies, and as far as I'm aware, they couldn't be shipped in the UK, so I would have to pay for shipping from the US. So those things combined, the fact I couldn't order a big bulk load to sell at events, and the fact that I was going to have to pay huge shipping, just meant it wasn't worth it. And that the fact that I could do those things with Ingram, that I could order as many as I wanted, and that it was shipped within the UK, was a big benefit. KDP, you can now, you can do that. You can order up to 999 copies. They're shipped within the UK. The shipping prices are very similar between the two companies. There are some areas, I know Australia is one of them, where you can't get the books shipped, and you have to pay for UK or US shipping. But so yeah, so now there is less of a difference there, and as I say, that was a big reason why I went through Ingram, is because I knew I wanted personal copies to sell at events. But now it seems that KDP can fulfil that. The next thing to talk about is ISBNs. With KDP you can have a free KDP assigned ISBN if you want. With Ingram you have to supply your own. Initially I was like, oh, free. And I was well up for the KDP free ISBN, but then when I thought about it, actually I want to own the ISBNs. I want those associated to my publishing company. I don't want them linked to KDP or CreateSpace, as it was when I first started thinking about it. With KDP you can use your own ISBNs if you want to. And in the old days there were issues, I think, with if you had your own ISBNs, and that would limit you through expanded distribution and things. That doesn't seem to exist anymore with KDP. So anyway, I bought my own. They're expensive, but they're not that. I mean, I think I paid roughly £100 for 10, and I've only used 2, one for the paperback and one for the ebook. So I have another 8 that I can use for other projects. So yeah, but it's up to you really. If you want to use a free one, then you can, and if you don't want to, don't. So I thought that was cool. Next on my list is price. When you use Ingram Spark, you have to pay a setup fee of $50, $49 or something, to set your book up. Now, although initially I was like, oh, more money, this book has cost me a fortune, actually, if you order 50 copies of your book within 90 days, which I was intending to do, then you get that money back. So it's not as much of an outlay as you think. The issue comes if you want to change your files, which I did have to do once. If you want to change, once you've gone through everything's set up and the book is good to go, if you then go in and say, actually I want to change the cover or I want to change the interior files, you have to pay $25 to change them. With KDP, there's no setup fee, you can fiddle around with the files whenever you want. Yeah, so again, weighing it up, it's up to you. It is marginally more expensive to use Ingram Spark, maybe, depending on what you do. The next thing then is expanded distribution. Well, another reason for why I initially was keen on Ingram Spark over CreateSpace / KDP is because of the expanded distribution, is because through Ingram you can choose different percentages to give as royalties to retailers, and you can offer a bigger royalty, which makes it or a bigger discount, sorry, not a bigger royalty, a bigger discount to them to encourage them, to make them more likely to buy the book. Whereas through KDP, it is a flat rate of 40%. So with Ingram, you could choose to offer 55% discount. That can be a big benefit for expanded distribution. And as I say, initially CreateSpace didn't offer me the expanded distribution that I wanted because I had my own ISBNs. With KDP now, that isn't the same issue. What is a problem is I cannot do expanded distribution through KDP because my ISBN is used on more than one site. So that's made me ineligible because I've got my book through Ingram. So if I wanted to have my book on Ingram and use that to sell through, I don't know, some particular website, and then I wanted to use KDP for everything else, I couldn't do that because KDP does not allow me to use expanded distribution if that ISBN is used through another bookseller. Next I want to talk about tax. Now, as a UK resident, if I sell books in the US, because there's a treaty between the two countries, I don't have to pay US sales tax because, you know, I'm eligible for UK taxes. And on KDP, there was a really easy form where you just filled in your details, you answered some questions, boom, it gave you a certificate, job done. It did not take very long at all. Through Ingram Spark, in order to get that exemption, I had to fill in, I think, 9 different documents, and I had to print them off, fill them in. There is actually a pretty good guide on how to do it on Ingram Spark, because initially I was just looking at this paperwork going, well, I've no idea. But if you download the guide on how to do it, it's actually not that bad. Fill them in, scan them in, upload them, you know, because I don't want to pay an extra 30% sales tax. So it was easier to do the tax forms, a lot easier to do the tax forms through KDP. Finally, the dashboards for looking at your sales and all of that. I have found, well, the actual dashboard, the actual, you know, header page, I would say, no, it is better through KDP, actually. I mean, there's not that much difference, but KDP, what it is you can see initially what your sales are on both of them. But then if you want any more detail on where those have sold, what formats those have sold, how much royalty you've made, on KDP it's literally pick a tab and you've instantly got that information. With Ingram, you have to fill in this thing where you choose date ranges and currencies and all these various parameters, and then they email you a report. And I found that it wasn't self-explanatory, really, and I struggled initially, and then the report that you get sent, I wasn't entirely clear on who those books, well, I don't know, I just didn't find them clear. I think that's all I can say. So in terms of just being able to go on there and kind of go, right, how much money have I made, and how have my books been sold, where are they sold, that kind of stuff, you know, what country have they sold in. On KDP it was literally right there and it took me seconds, whereas with Ingram it's type it in, figure it out, get it emailed to me, and it was a pain. So it's not that, you know, they both work, but it's just easier on KDP. So to summarise, there are pros and cons to both. I personally like the combination of using the two, of using KDP to publish through Amazon and using Ingram Spark to publish through everybody else. I do like that. I think that now, since KDP offer a little bit more with their expanded distribution in terms of just less barriers to it, and since you can buy lots of author copies, and since we've got this ARC copy, I think that they're now offering a lot more. Potentially, would I have only gone through KDP? Maybe, actually. But I am happy that I have gone through both. I think I would choose to do the same again if, you know, in future books. It always is going to depend on what you're looking for and, you know, what your priorities are. But I do think that it's an improved service with KDP. So it's always going to be a case of weighing it up. If you want to use both, it does work. And incidentally, when I created this paperback on KDP, I was worried I was going to end up with 2 listings, but actually what happened was as soon as the paperback went live, it just kicked off the Ingram one, so there weren't 2 listings, so I had nothing to worry about there. So just to reassure anybody, that was my experience if you're worried about that. There's lots of information out there. I hope that this has helped to kind of show how they weigh up with the changes in place. I'm sure that KDP will do lots of new things and make changes because the service is still in its infancy. These things are always going to change, but that was my experience. I was happy using both of them. There are pros and cons to both, like I said. So anyway, please like if you did. Please leave me a comment about what you found or what you think about these services and how you weigh them up. You know, let me know your opinions, and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos about writing and about reading. I like to talk about the books that I'm reading too. And I will see you all for my next one. Bye!